I'm so happy to be 86. I just realized how blessed I am. I can barely see or hear, but thankfully I can still drive. But on the way over, I got stopped by a police officer who said, "Lady, get out of the car." I did. He said, "You're staggering." I said, "Thank you, officer. You're not bad looking yourself." He said, "Your eyes look glassy. Have you been drinking?" "No, I haven't been drinking." "Your eyes look glazed. Have you been eating donuts?" In the car, my husband grabbed my arm. He said, "You just drove through 3 red lights." I did? Really? I thought you were driving. It seems like the police, they're just out to get me. I got stopped. The officer said, "You're speeding." I said, "I know, officer. I have to step on it so I won't forget where I'm going." He said, "Lady, I've been watching out for you all day." Got here as fast as I could. Besides, you said I'm going 90 miles an hour. How can you go 90 miles an hour when you've only been driving for 2 minutes? Besides, I'm just trying to keep up with the traffic. There is no traffic. I know I'm trying to catch up. But I got a sweet note from an officer congratulating me on my parking skills. The note said, "Parking fine." I got in my car. My steering wheel and my stereo were missing. I was in the back seat. And I had this little fender bender. I accidentally hit a magician. I said to my husband, "Wasn't my fault. He came out of nowhere." And you know what? I have bad luck. I actually failed my driver's test over one small mistake. I ran over the man giving me the test. It wasn't that bad. It was only his foot. You know, getting older is a lot of fun, right? And I want to tell you about my mother. My mother was a very positive person, and I tried really hard to be like her. You know something? She, in her 80s, bought herself a see-through negligee. I said, "Mother, why would you buy a see-through negligee? You don't know anyone who can see through it." And I took her to a restaurant. She ordered a shot of whiskey with 2 drops of water. I said, "Mother, why would you order a shot of whiskey with only 2 drops of water?" She said, "Honey, I can hold my liquor, but I can't hold my water." And I went to visit her at her residence, and in the hallway was an older lady, and she knew me, and I said, "Do you remember my name, and how old are you?" She said, "Oh, no, honey, I don't remember your name, but if you go to the front desk, they'll tell you." And you know, at my mother's residence, I did a little show, true story. And in the front row was an older couple. This lady was all dolled up, and she was pretty old, holding hands with a younger man. And after I was curious, I went to her and I said, "Honey, how old are you?" She said, "Honey, can you keep a secret? I am 92, and don't you tell him because he doesn't know how old I am." And my mother, I took her to church, and the minister said to her, "Would someone here please choose 4 hymns?" My mother put her hand up and said, "I choose him, 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 and him." And you know, when she was into her 80s, she dated a man in his 90s, and when she came home, I said, "Honey, how was your date?" She said, "It was just awful. I had to slap him 3 times. "You did, Mother? Was he fresh?" She said, "No, I thought he was dead." at the residence, her best friend said, "So boring here. What can we do that's really fun?" My mother said, "Oh, let's put on our bikinis and we'll run through the men's rooms." So they did. In one room was 2 old men. The first one said, "What was that?" The other said, "I don't know, but it sure needs ironing." A new man moved in, and he sat beside my mother at dinner, and they got talking to each other, and they got liking each other. And before the evening was over, he said to her, "Will you marry me?" She said, "Oh, yes, yes." Well, he went home. He got up in the morning. He couldn't remember these. She said, "Yes or no?" So he went to see her. He said, "Last night I asked you to marry me. Did you say yes or no?" She said, "Honey, I said yes, yes, and I'm so happy you came to see me because I couldn't remember who it was who asked me." You know, I've lived a long time, and I'm now starting to believe in evolution because my neck is evolving into a turkey, and I'm going to have to learn to gobble. And my lower arms, they're evolving into wings. I hope angel wings so I can fly to heaven. And my skin, it's evolving into something. I don't think it knows yet, but I know this. It's creeping off somewhere, probably to the floor. Or it's evolving into being young again, because every time I bang it against something, I get a big tattoo. You older people probably know this, right? But it's okay because now I have a lot more in common with my grandkids. Tattoos. Sometimes I have more tattoos than they do. Hey, do you believe that we inherit things from our parents? I do. My mom had big boobs. My dad had deep wrinkles. You can guess who I took after. My uncle. No, I was born flat-chested. And when I was a young girl, I got this gizmo that if you use it every day, it will build you up. I did. It built me up to 36C biceps. Hey, I look pretty good, don't I? I can use these when I fly to heaven. Did you know when I was young, we had implants just like you do, only they didn't cost $5,000. They cost 50 cents. They were called socks. And if ever we lost one, we always had a backup, Kleenex. And I still have Kleenex in my bag. Did you know that padded bras now have a warning on them? The warning says, "Objects appear larger than they really are." They've made padded bras more real now. Now when I run or jog, they bounce. Do you know the difference between a male pancake and a female pancake? The female is stacked, of course, unless she's flatter than a pancake. Oh, you know, I really care how I look now, but nobody looks, but I still get lots of compliments. Like, "I just love your shoes." And you know, sometimes I think, I wonder how I can look younger. Like Martha Stewart. Did you know that Martha Stewart is almost my age, and she was on the front page of Sports Illustrated? She looked great. I still and now believe that Photoshop and plastic surgery really work. In fact, Martha Stewart, she inspired me. I actually went to a plastic surgeon. He said, lady, at your age, it would cost you $50,000 to get a new look. I said, doctor, if I spent $50,000, you better make me look different so my husband can't find me. And I was in the office, and I thought, one more question. How about Botox? He said, lady, at your age, you'd need so much Botox, it would kill you. Hey, you know, people often ask me, how did I ever get into comedy? Well, you know what? At 82 years old, I went to the doctor and I said, doctor, I feel funny and I'm deaf. What should I do? He said, become a stand-up comedian. So I did. Can you imagine being 82 years old and going to your family and saying, I'm going to do stand-up comedy? Would they support you or put you in a care home? My family, they thought I was crazy. But guess what? Now they have to pay to come and see me. And you know something, sometimes I get them in for half price. And people say, how did you ever do comedy? Well, I found this book. It was called The Idiot's Guide to Stand-Up Comedy. I really needed it when I got on stage and forgot my jokes and felt like an idiot. The first thing it said is, you've got to overcome your fear, you know? And it's really, how many of you would like to be up here, by the way? Nobody's saying anything. Yeah. The very first time I did comedy on the stage, my mind went completely blank. My husband's in the front row. He says, want your notes? Yes. Got them. No glasses. Want your glasses? He brought them up. I put them on my notes. They fell on the floor. And the audience roared with laughter. It was the best set I ever had. And that book said, you've got to pick your right audience. So I thought, I'm a senior citizen. I'm going to go and do comedy for senior citizens at care homes. Guess what? It didn't work. They didn't laugh at my jokes because they're all deaf like I am. And halfway through my set, they grabbed their walkers and went back to their rooms to have their afternoon nap. And that book said, you've got to be able to handle hecklers. So when I got a heckler, I was ready. I said, you better look out or I'm going to come down there and knock your teeth out. But I wouldn't want to improve your looks. You know, I've done a lot of comedy with a lot of very good comedians, and I think, oh my goodness, how long does it take you to get really good at this? Some of them say 20 years. I thought, wow, 86 and 20 years. I'm going to be a really good dead comedian. You know, I'm a great-grandma. How many of you are great-grandparents? Not too many, but I bet lots of grandchildren. Yeah, lots of you. It's the best time of life to be a great-grandma. And my grandkids love me because we play games. We play, let's find Grandma's keys. And let's find Grandma's car. And let's find Grandpa because we forgot him at the mall. When they come to visit, I find a big playpen. When they leave, I climb out. They're a little demolition derby. Do you know what a straight nine is? When the 3-year-old comes in the front door, heads straight to the remote and demolishes it. Believe me, that really makes my husband's day. Oh, he can't watch 5 movies while I'm trying to figure out the storyline. My grandson, Grandma, how old are you? I said, honey, I'm 86. He said, Grandma, did you start at 1? Grandma, you're just like God, you're both old. He said, Grandma, what are those lines on your face? I said, honey, they're crow's feet. He said, Grandma, must have been a big crow. And he said to my husband, Grandpa, can you croak like a frog? He said, I guess so. Why do you want me to croak? Well, Grandma said, if you croak, we all get to go to Hawaii. You know, being older is quite a thing. You know, I've lived long enough to become an antique. I'm the oldest thing in my house. Maybe the oldest thing in this room. And I don't have to buy an antique to have something old to sit on. I already have one, right? You know, the other day, I went to visit my friend, and she said, honey, just make yourself at home. I said, wow, okay. So I rearranged her furniture, yelled at her kids, and fought with her husband. You know, the other day I was doing my laundry, and I thought, I hate this. I'm not doing laundry anymore. Matching socks is just a waste of time. I'm going to become a nudist. Then I remembered what I looked like in the nude. I went back to matching my socks. And my husband, he said he was in the shower and he watched a dead spider down the drain. He said, I think that spider took one look at me and decided to commit suicide. On the way over here, a man knocked on my door. He said, would you please consider making a small donation to the swimming pool that we're building in your community? I said, of course, I'd love to. And I gave him a glass of water. And my husband phoned my son. He said, son, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your mother and I are getting a divorce. He said, you are? Are you crazy? Don't you do anything? I'm grabbing my sister and I'm coming right home. He hung up the phone and he said, they're coming home for your birthday and they're paying their own way. You know, you got to be positive when you're older. Because bad things happen, right? Don't bad things happen to all of us, right? We have to be positive. Well, something bad happened to me. I fell down the stairs, but I remembered to be positive, and I said, wow, that's the fastest I've moved in a long time. And you know, when you've been married to this song, you gotta remember to thank God for all your many blessings, right? I thank God for my blessings and for my dear husband of 86, and we have been married for 67 years. Thank you for the applause, but I need a standing ovation. We're an endangered species. Right. I said to my husband, honey, what's been the hardest part for you to be married to me for 67 years? He said the first 67 years. I'm not surprised because 70 years ago we met and it was love at first sight. I fell in love with this car. But you've been a wonderful, wonderful audience, and I thank you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.